Close your eyes, dear listener, and let your mind drift to a distant time, to the sunlit hills of Renaissance Italy. It is the year 1480, and the air is alive with the scent of olive groves and the soft clatter of cobblestone streets. Picture Florence, its domes gleaming under a Tuscan sky, or Venice, where canals reflect the glow of twilight. This is a world of art and ambition, of soaring cathedrals and whispered secrets. But tonight, we tell a quieter story, a story of women whose lives were bound by unseen chains, whose voices were soft, but whose spirits were fierce. Imagine a young woman, perhaps named Giulia, standing by a window in her father's house. Her world is small, yet her heart dreams of more. Let us wander into her life, into a time when beauty and brutality walked hand in hand. Settle now, as the past unfolds like a tapestry, thread by gentle thread. Renaissance Italy was a land of contrasts, a place where the human spirit seemed to soar. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci painted masterpieces, their brushes dancing across canvas to capture light and shadow. Architects raised domes that kissed the heavens, and poets sang of love and glory. In Florence, the Medici family wove their wealth into the fabric of the city, their palaces gleaming with marble and gold. In Venice, merchants traded spices and silks, their ships gliding across the lagoon like swans. Rome, eternal and sacred, hummed with the footsteps of pilgrims and the ambitions of popes. It was a time of rebirth, or so the scholars called it, a time when the ancient wisdom of Greece and Rome was reborn in books, in statues, in ideas. But for women, this rebirth was a distant dream, a light they could see but rarely touch. Women in Renaissance Italy lived in a world of rules, their lives shaped by laws as old as the hills and traditions as heavy as stone. A woman's place was clear, etched into the very fabric of society. She was a daughter, a wife, a mother, her identity tied to the men around her. Her father decided her fate, her husband held her reins, and her sons carried her legacy. To be a woman was to be a shadow, moving quietly behind the brilliance of men. Yet, in that shadow, there was strength, a resilience that burned like a candle in the dark. Tonight, we step into that shadow to hear the stories of women whose names are rarely spoken, whose lives were both ordinary and extraordinary. Imagine Giulia again, a young woman in Florence. She is 16, her dark hair braided beneath a velvet cap, her eyes tracing the Arno River beyond her window. She's the daughter of a merchant, wealthy enough to wear silk, but not noble enough to wield power. Her world is her father's house, a maze of rooms filled with the clink of coins and the rustle of parchment. Giulia dreams of painting, of reading the books her brothers study, but such dreams are forbidden. The law is clear. A woman cannot own property, cannot sign a contract, cannot choose her path. Her life belongs to her father, and soon to a husband she may not know. In Renaissance Italy, patriarchy was a fortress, its walls built of custom and law. A woman's role was to obey, to serve, to uphold the honor of her family. The Decretum Gratiani, a legal text from centuries past, still held sway, declaring women subordinate to men. Fathers arranged marriages, often when their daughters were still children, sealing alliances with dowries of gold and land. A woman who defied her father faced disgrace, or worse, confinement to a convent or a life of shame. Even noble women, draped in jewels and velvet, were pawns in a game of power. Their marriages bound families, cities, even kingdoms, but their hearts had little say. Julia's mother, perhaps named Caterina, knows this truth too well. She was married at 14, her dowry a chest of linen and a promise of loyalty. Now she teaches Julia to embroider, to pray, to be silent. Silence was a woman's virtue, praised by preachers and poets alike. The scholar Leon Battista Alberti, in his treatise on the family, wrote that a woman's beauty lay in her modesty, her voice soft and her eyes downcast. To speak too loudly, to question too boldly, was to invite suspicion. Yet, in the quiet of their chambers, women like Caterina whispered their wisdom to their daughters, passing down stories of strength and survival. Picture now a marketplace in Siena, where women gather under the shade of a stone arcade. Their voices are low, their baskets heavy with bread and herbs. They are wives and mothers, their lives a cycle of labor and prayer. The church loomed large in their world, its spires casting long shadows over every village and city. Priests preached of Eve's sin, warning women to be chaste, obedient, pure. The Virgin Mary was their model, her image painted on every altar, her serenity a standard few could meet. To be virtuous was to be invisible, to move through life without disturbing its order. But virtue was a double-edged sword. A woman's honor was fragile, tied to her body and her reputation. A whispered rumor, a glance too long, could ruin her. In Venice, the Senate passed laws to regulate women's clothing, banning low necklines and lavish jewels, lest they tempt men to sin. In Florence, sumptuary laws dictated the length of a woman's veil, the weight of her gown. To defy these rules was to risk fines, or worse, exile from the community. Yet, some women found ways to bend these rules, their small rebellions hidden in the folds of their skirts or the words of their songs. Not all women's lives were the same. For Renaissance Italy was a land of stark divisions. In the palaces of the nobility, women like Lucrezia de' Medici dined on silver plates, their days filled with music and embroidery. But even they were bound by duty, their marriages sealing alliances between rival families. Lucrezia, daughter of Lorenzo the Magnificent, was wed at 17 to a man twice her age, her beauty a currency spent for power. Her letters, preserved in dusty archives, speak of duty, but also of longing, a wish for a world beyond her gilded cage. In the villages, peasant women like Maria toiled in fields and kitchens, their hands rough from spinning wool or kneading dough. Their lives were short, often ended by childbirth or plague, yet they were the backbone of their families. In the cities, merchant wives balanced ledgers and managed households, their labor unseen but essential. And in the shadows of Venice's canals, courtesans like Veronica Franco wielded wit and charm, their freedom bought at the cost of scorn. Each woman, from noble to peasant, carried her own burdens. The noble woman faced the pressure of dynasty, her womb a battleground for heirs. The peasant bore the weight of survival, her body worn by endless toil. The merchant's wife navigated a world of commerce, her voice rarely heard. And the courtesan danced a dangerous dance, her intellect both her shield and her chain. Yet, in their own ways, they all defied the silence, their lives a testament to resilience. Though the Renaissance was a man's world, there were whispers of change. In Ferrara, Isabella d'Este, a marquess, collected art and books, her mind as sharp as any scholar's. In Venice, women like Moderata Fonte wrote treatises on their worth, their words daring to challenge the order. These women were rare, their voices faint against the roar of tradition, but they planted seeds that would one day grow. For every Julia, trapped in her father's house, there was a dream of something more, a dream that lingered in the margins of history. As we drift through this world, let us remember these women, their names often lost but their stories enduring. They were daughters, wives, mothers, rebels, their lives woven into the tapestry of the Renaissance. Their struggles were many, but so was their strength, a quiet fire that burned through the ages. Picture them now, standing at their windows, walking through markets, kneeling in prayer. Their world was brutal, yes, but it was also beautiful, a canvas of courage painted in soft hues.
Dear listener, let your mind drift to a grand palazzo in Milan, its walls aglow with the flicker of candlelight. It is the year 1490, and the air carries the scent of rosewater and polished oak. Picture a young woman, perhaps named Beatrice, standing before a mirror, a reflection framed in a gown of crimson velvet. Her hands tremble as she adjusts a pearl-encrusted veil, for tomorrow she will be a bride, not for love, but for the honor of her family's name. In Renaissance Italy, marriage was a tapestry woven with ambition, gold, and power. A noblewoman like Beatrice were its delicate threads. Tonight, we step softly into their world, where vows were sealed with contracts and hearts were bound by duty. Let the distant strum of a lute carry you now as we wander through the shadows of their stories. Settle in and let the past unfold gently, like a petal falling in a quiet garden.
In the glittering cities of Renaissance Italy, marriage was more than a union of two souls. It was a stage where power played its grandest roles. From Florence to Ferrara, from Venice to Rome, noble families crafted alliances as carefully as artists carved marble. A marriage could bind rival houses, secure trade routes, or win favor with a pope. For noble women, these unions were the cornerstone of their lives, their purpose decided long before they could speak. Picture Beatrice again, her dark eyes tracing the intricate frescoes on her chamber's walls. She is 16, the daughter of a Sforza lord, and her fate was sealed when she was but a child. Her betrothal to a distant noble, a man she has never met, is a contract inked in her father's study, its terms counted in florins and promises. The dowry was the heart of this bargain, a treasure chest of gold, jewels and land, that a bride brought to her husband's house. In Florence, a dowry could be worth thousands of florins, enough to buy a palazzo or a fleet of ships. Families saved for years, sometimes decades, to amass such wealth, for a daughter's dowry was her family's honor made visible. Without it, a girl might remain unwed, a burden to her kin, or be sent to a convent, her dreams locked behind stone walls. Beatrice's dowry, we might imagine, includes silver plate, embroidered linens, and a vineyard in the hills of Lombardy. Her mother, a woman worn by years of such duties, has overseen its preparation, counting each coin with care. Yet, for Beatrice, the dowry is a chain, binding her to a life she did not choose. Let us linger in Beatrice's chamber, where the air is heavy with the scent of lavender and wax. Her gown, sewn with threads of gold, feels more like armor than adornment. She has been taught to walk gracefully, to speak softly, to smile even when her heart aches. Her mother's voice echoes in her mind, reciting the virtues of a noble bride: obedience, modesty, fertility. These were the qualities that made a woman valuable, or so the preachers said. The church, ever watchful, cast its shadow over every marriage, its priests blessing unions while reminding women of their place. The Bible spoke of submission, and the scholars of the day, like the humanist Francesco Barbera, wrote treatises praising wives who served their husbands without question. But service came at a cost. For many noble women, marriage was a gilded cage, its bars forged by law and custom. A husband held absolute power over his wife, his authority sanctioned by the state and the church. In Venice, the law declared that a wife's possessions became her husband's upon marriage, her dowry no longer her own. In Florence, a woman could not leave her husband's house without his permission, her movements watched by servants and kin. Domestic abuse was a silent scourge, its marks hidden beneath silk and smiles. A husband might strike his wife for speaking out of turn, for failing to bear a son, or simply for displeasing him. The courts rarely intervened, for a man's home was his kingdom, and his wife his subject. Picture now a banquet hall in Ferrara, where Lucrezia Borgia, daughter of Pope Alexander VI, sits beside her new husband, Alfonso d'Este. It is 1502, and Lucrezia is 22, already twice married, her life a chessboard of her father's ambitions. Her golden hair is braided with pearls, her smile practiced, but her eyes betray a flicker of weariness. Her first marriage to Giovanni Sforza was annulled when it no longer served the Borgia family, her honor questioned to justify the dissolution. Her second, to Alfonso of Aragon, ended in tragedy, his life cut short by political enemies. Now, as Duchess of Ferrara, Lucrezia navigates a court where every word is a weapon, every glance a calculation. Her letters, preserved in archives, speak of her intelligence, her charm, but also her quiet sorrow, a longing for a life beyond the game. Let us drift now to a quieter scene. A villa in the Tuscan countryside, where a girl named Isabella, barely 12, prepares for her betrothal. Her father, a minor noble, has secured a match with a wealthy merchant's son, a union to strengthen his faltering fortunes. Isabella's small hands clutch a rosary, her prayers a whisper against the weight of her future. In Renaissance Italy, child betrothals were common among the elite, girls promised in marriage as young as 7 or 8. The The ceremony might wait until puberty, but the contract was binding, a promise sealed with wax and ambition. Isabella's dowry, though modest, has drained her family's coffers, her mother selling jewels to meet its demands. She will leave her home at 14, her childhood traded for a husband's name. These young brides face dangers beyond the loss of freedom. Childbirth, the ultimate duty of a noblewoman, was a perilous journey. A girl married at 14 might face her first pregnancy at 15, her body still growing, her frame unready for the strain. Medical knowledge was limited, midwives relying on herbs and prayers to ease labor. In the Grand Palazzos, where tapestries hung and fires roared, death was a frequent guest. 1 in 5 women died in childbirth, their lives extinguished before their children could know them. Those who survived often faced miscarriage, stillbirth, or the loss of infants, their grief a private wound carried in silence. Yet, even in this world of constraints, some women found ways to resist. Picture Beatrice again, now a year into her marriage. Her husband, a stern man with a temper, expects obedience. But Beatrice has learned to wield her wit like a shield. She writes letters to her sisters, her words coded with humor and defiance. She oversees the household, her careful management saving florins that her husband spends on feasts. In her private moments, she reads poetry, her mind wandering to worlds beyond her walls. Women, like Beatrice, were not passive, though history often paints them so. They negotiated dowries, mediated family disputes, and preserved their honor through cunning and care. Some noble women, like Lucrezia Borgia, turned their cages into courts of influence. Lucrezia in Ferrara became a patron of artists and poets, her palazzo a haven for the Renaissance's brightest minds. She commissioned paintings, hosted salons, and wrote letters that shaped alliances. Her power was subtle, woven through charm and intellect, but it was power nonetheless. Other women, less famous, found their own paths. In Milan, a noblewoman named Bianca Maria Visconti managed estates while her husband was at war, her decisions guiding her family's survival. In Venice, women like Cassandra Fedele, a scholar, spoke at universities, their voices rare but resonant. But defiance came at a price. A noblewoman who spoke too boldly, who challenged her husband or her kin, risked disgrace or worse. In Rome, the Inquisition watched closely, its agents quick to accuse women of heresy or immorality. A wife who sought to leave her husband faced exile, her children taken, her name erased from the family's honor. Even Lucrezia Borgia, powerful as she was, lived under the shadow of her father's enemies, her every move scrutinized. The poet Laura Teresina, who dared to write of women's worth, faced whispers of scandal, her verses deemed too bold for a lady's pen. For many noble women, the greatest rebellion was survival. To bear children, to manage households, to navigate courts filled with intrigue. These were acts of endurance. Their lives were brutal, yes, but they were also beautiful. Their strength hidden in the folds of their gowns, the words of their prayers, the glances they shared with other women. Picture them now, standing in their palazzos, their veils catching the light of a setting sun. They were daughters of ambition, wives of duty, mothers of hope. Their stories, though rarely written, linger in the stones of Italy's cities, in the archives of their letters, in the silence of their dreams. Dear listener, Let your mind drift to a quiet village nestled in the hills of Umbria, where the first light of dawn kisses fields of golden wheat. It is the year 1485, and the air is cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and freshly baked bread. Picture a woman, perhaps named Maria, rising from a straw pallet, her hands already calloused from years of toil. In Renaissance Italy, peasant women like Maria were the heartbeat of the land, their lives woven into the rhythm of the seasons. Tonight, we walk beside them, through dusty paths and humble homes, where every day was a dance with survival. Their stories are not carved in marble or painted on canvas, but etched in the soil they tilled and the children they raised. Let the soft hum of a spinning wheel guide you now as we slip into their world, a world of labor and quiet endurance. Settle in and let the past unfold gently, like a leaf falling in a silent forest. Imagine Maria's village, a cluster of stone cottages huddled beneath the shadow of a crumbling castle. The sun has barely risen, but Maria is awake, her breath visible in the chilly morning air. She pulls a coarse woolen shawl over her shoulders, her feet bare against the earthen floor. Her home is small, its walls blackened by the smoke of a single hearth. A wooden cradle sits in the corner, where her youngest child, a boy of 2, sleeps fitfully. Outside, the rooster crows and the village stirs, its rhythm dictated by the land. In Renaissance Italy, peasants made up most of the population, their lives bound to the fields that fed the cities of Florence, Siena, and beyond. For women like Maria, each day was a tapestry of tasks, each thread a struggle to keep hunger and cold at bay. Maria's morning begins with the fire, her hands deftly stacking kindling to coax a flame. She kneads dough for flatbread, her fingers moving with the muscle memory of years. The flour is coarse, milled from the barley her family grows, for wheat is a luxury reserved for the lords. She fetches water from the village well, her bucket heavy against her hip, her steps slow but steady. The well is a gathering place where women exchange whispers of news, a neighbor's fever, a coming harvest, a birth, a death. These moments, brief as they are Maria's only respite, a flicker of community in a life of endless work. The men are already in the fields, ploughing or sowing, but the women's labor is no less vital. They tend gardens, milk goats, and spin wool, their hands never idle, their days stretching from dawn to dusk. Let us follow Maria to the fields where the sun climbs higher, warming the earth beneath her feet. She carries a sickle, its blade worn but sharp, and joins the other women harvesting rye. The work is backbreaking, her body bent low as she cuts stalks and binds them into sheaves. Peasant women in Renaissance Italy were not spared the field's demands, for every hand was needed to coax life from the soil. Maria works alongside her husband, her brothers, her neighbors, her skirt tucked up to keep it from the mud. The lord of the manor, whose castle looms in the distance, claims half their crop as rent, leaving little for the winter. Hunger is a constant shadow, its presence felt in the hollow cheeks of Maria's children. in the ache of her own empty stomach. The land was both sustainer and taskmaster. In the hills of Tussance grew olives and grapes, their labor feeding the presses that produced oil and wine for the cities. In the marshes of the Veneto, women waded through muck to gather reeds or salt, their hands raw from the work. Seasons dictated their lives, spring for planting, summer for tending, autumn for harvest, winter for mending and praying. But the land was unforgiving. A late frost could kill the vines, a drought could parch the fields, and a plague could empty the village. Maria has seen all these, her memory marked by years of lean harvests and lost kin. Yet she works on, her hands steady, her heart tethered to the hope of the next season. Picture now the quiet of midday when Maria pauses to nurse her youngest, a girl born just last spring. Her body aches from the morning's labor, but she cradles the child gently, her lullaby a soft hum against the buzz of flies. Childbirth was a peasant woman's greatest trial, a journey through pain and peril that many did not survive. In Renaissance Italy, 1 in 5 women died in labor, their bodies weakened by malnutrition and endless work. Maria has borne 6 children, but only 3 still live. 2 were lost to fever, 1 to a birth that came too soon. Each loss is a wound she carries in silence, her grief unspoken, for there is no time to mourn when the fields cool. Midwives, women like Maria's neighbor Anna, were the guardians of childbirth. Their knowledge passed down through generations. They used herbs, fennel for pain, sage for strength, and prayers to the Virgin Mary, whose image hung in every home. But their tools were few, and their skill could not always outwit fate. A breech birth, a hemorrhage, or a fever could claim a mother's life, leaving her children to the mercy of kin or the village. Maria remembers her own mother, who died bringing her brother into the world, her face pale as the moon, her hand cold in Maria's grasp. Now, as a mother herself, Maria prays each night for her children's survival, her rosary beads worn smooth by worry. Let us drift to the evening, when Maria returns to her cottage, her arms full of firewood, her skirt dusted with chaff. The village is quiet now, save for the lowing of cattle and the chatter of children. But another shadow looms over Maria's life: disease. The plague, a spectre that swept through Italy in waves, was a constant fear. In 1478 it ravaged Florence, leaving villages like Maria's half empty, their fields untended, their hearths cold. Peasant women, tasked with caring for the sick, were often the first to fall, their bodies exposed to fever and filth. Maria has seen neighbors carried off by the Black Death, their skin marked by sores, their eyes wide with fear. She burns juniper to ward off the miasma, a ritual learned from her grandmother. But she knows it is a frail defense against such a foe. Other illnesses, less dramatic but no less deadly, stalked the villages. Fevers took children in the night, dysentery struck after heavy rains, and smallpox left scars on those it spared. Medical care was a luxury beyond Maria's reach. The physicians in the cities, with their leeches and Latin, served the wealthy, not the poor. Village healers, often women, offered what they could: poultices of nettle, teas of chamomile, but their remedies were as much hope as science. Maria herself knows a few cures, learned at her mother's knee: honey for coughs, willow bark for pain. But when her eldest son fell ill last winter, his small body burning with fever, no herb could save him. She buried him beneath an oak, her tears mixing with the rain. Yet, amidst the hardship, there was solace in the village's bonds. Picture Maria now, sitting by the hearth with her neighbors, their hands busy with spinning or mending. The women share stories, their voices low, their laughter a rare gift. They speak of the harvest, of a weaver's new pattern, of a wedding planned for spring. These gatherings, though fleeting, were the threads that held the village together. Peasant women relied on each other, sharing food when stores ran low, caring for each other's children, tending the sick. When Maria's sister lost her home to a fire, the village women rebuilt it, stone by stone, their hands as steady as their hearts. The church too was a pillar, its bells calling the village to prayer. Maria attends Mass each Sunday, her head covered, her knees pressed to the cold floor. The priest speaks of salvation, but also of obedience, reminding women of their place. Yet, the church offered moments of reprieve, feast days when the village danced, saints' days when Maria could pray for her children's health. The Virgin Mary, mother and protector, was a figure of comfort, her image a beacon in Maria's home. In these moments, Maria found a flicker of hope, a belief that her toil was not in vain. Maria's life, like that of countless peasant women, was a testament to endurance. She rose each day, her body weary but her will unbroken. She planted seeds, knowing many would fail. She bore children, knowing some would not survive. She spun wool, her fingers bleeding, to clothe her family through the winter. Her name would not be written in the chronicles of Florence or the annals of Rome, but her labor fed the cities, her hands shaped the future. In the villages of Renaissance Italy, women like Maria were the roots of the land, their strength hidden in the furrows of the fields, the stitches of their cloth, the lullabies they sang. Some found small rebellions in their toil. Maria, we might imagine, weaves a secret pattern into her cloth, a flower no one else will see. She teaches her daughter to count the stars, to dream beyond the village. These acts, small as they are, were defiance against a world that sought to bind her. Other women in other villages did the same, singing songs of old heroines, sharing remedies, keeping the fire of their spirit alive. Their lives were brutal, yes, but they were also beautiful, a quiet symphony of survival played out in the shadow of the Renaissance's glory. Dear listener, let your mind drift to a quiet convent in Siena, its stone walls cool against the golden heat of a summer's day. It is the year 1490, and the air is soft with the scent of beeswax and blooming rosemary. Picture a young woman, perhaps named Clara, kneeling in a chapel, her hands folded, her veil brushing her shoulders. In Renaissance Italy, convents were havens of prayer and prisons of duty, where women like Clara sought God or were hidden from the world. Tonight, we step softly through these sacred halls, where silence was a language and faith a heavy mantle. Their stories are woven with devotion, sacrifice, and quiet strength. Their lives a whisper in the shadow of the church. Let the faint echo of chanting voices carry you now into a world of solemn vows and hidden dreams. Settle in and let the past unfold gently like a candle's flame flickering in the dusk. Imagine Clara's convent, its high walls encircling a courtyard where a single olive tree stands, its leaves silver in the morning light. The bell tolls for matins, its chime a call to prayer that echoes through the cloisters. Clara rises from her narrow cot, her cell sparse, a wooden stool, a crucifix, a small window framing the hills of Tuscany. She is 18, the daughter of a Florentine merchant sent here when her family could not afford a dowry for marriage. In Renaissance Italy, convents were a common fate for such daughters. Those who could not be wed, those who were too willful, or those whose families sought favor with the church. For some, the convent was a calling, a place to seek God's grace. For others, like Clara, it was a sentence, a life chosen by others. Convents dotted the landscape of Italy, from the bustling cities of Florence and Venice to the quiet villages of Umbria. They housed thousands of women, noble women, merchants' daughters, even peasants, each bound by vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. In Siena, the convent of Santa Maria degli Angeli was known for its strict rule, its nuns living in silence and prayer. In Venice, the convent of San Zaccaria was a haven for noble daughters, its halls adorned with frescoes, its coffers filled with dowries paid to the church. These institutions were both sacred and practical, serving as spiritual centers and social solutions. A family with too many daughters could preserve its wealth by sending one to the cloister, her dowry smaller than that required for a husband. Let us follow Clara through her day. Her footsteps soft on the stone floor. She joins the other nuns in the chapel, their voices rising in the Salve Regina, a hymn to the Virgin Mary. The music is haunting, its notes weaving through the incense-heavy air. Clara's veil, coarse and white, marks her as a novice, her vows not yet final. She was 12 when her father brought her here. His face stern, her mother's eyes wet with tears. She did not choose this life, but she has learned its rhythms. Prayer at dawn, work in the garden, silence at meals. The rule of St. Benedict governs the convent, its laws dictating every hour, every act. To be a nun was to surrender the self, to live for God and the community, not for one's own desires. Yet, surrender was not always peaceful. Many women entered convents against their will, their families deciding their fate. In Florence, records show that nearly half of noble daughters were sent to convents by 1500, their dowries paid to the church rather than a groom. These monache forzate, forced nuns, lived with resentment, their hearts longing for the world beyond the walls. Clara, we might imagine, dreams of the Arno River, of the markets where she once ran as a child. Her letters to her sister, smuggled out by a sympathetic servant, speak of the weight of her veil, the cold of her cell. But to defy her vows was to risk scandal, or worse, the wrath of the Church. The Inquisition, ever vigilant, could punish a nun for heresy or disobedience, her life scrutinized by abbesses and priests. Yet, for some, the convent was a refuge. Picture now a different nun, Sister Agnes, older and serene, her hands worn from years of copying manuscripts. She entered the convent willingly, drawn to a life of prayer and study. In Renaissance Italy, convents were rare places where women could learn, their libraries holding books of theology, poetry, even medicine. Agnes, we might imagine, has taught Clara to read Latin, her quill scratching out psalms in the quiet of the scriptorium. For women like Agnes, The convent offered purpose, a chance to serve God and escape the dangers of marriage, childbirth, abuse, or a husband's control. Saint Catherine of Siena, a Dominican tertiary who died in 1380, was their model, her visions and letters inspiring nuns across Italy. Catherine's words, fierce yet devout, spoke of a woman's strength through faith, her life a beacon for those within the cloister. The convent was also a community, its walls enclosing a sisterhood of shared labor and prayer. Clara works alongside her sisters, tending herbs in the garden, sewing vestments for the chapel, baking bread for the poor. These tasks, though humble, gave nuns a sense of purpose, their hands shaping the life of the convent. Some, like the nuns of San Zaccaria, wove tapestries sold to wealthy patrons, their skill bringing coin to the cloister. Others, in poorer convents, grew vegetables or made wine, their labor sustaining the community. In these moments, Clara finds a flicker of peace, her hands busy, her mind quieted by the rhythm of work. The convent's walls, though cold, offered safety from the world's chaos, war, plague, or the violence of men. But peace was not universal. Let us linger in the cloister at dusk, where Clara sits alone, her candle casting shadows on the wall. The silence, once comforting, now feels heavy, a reminder of her isolation. Convents were often prisons for those who did not choose them, their gates locked, their windows barred. Nuns were forbidden to leave without permission, their contact with the outside world limited to letters or rare visits, heavily chaperoned. In Venice, the Council of Ten passed laws to enforce claustration, ensuring nuns remained enclosed, their lives hidden from temptation. Clara's family visits once a year, their faces distant through the parlor's grill, their voices formal. She longs to touch her mother's hand, to walk in the fields, but such freedoms are forbidden. The convent's rules could be brutal. Disobedience, speaking during silence, refusing work, or questioning the abbess brought punishment. A nun might be confined to her cell, fed only bread and water, or forced to kneel for hours in prayer. In some convents, records tell of harsher measures, flogging or public humiliation for those who defied their vows. Clara has seen a sister, young and defiant, sent to a darker cell for whispering of escape. The church's authority was absolute, and to break a vow was to risk eternal damnation. Yet, within these walls, some women found ways to resist. Picture Clara in the scriptorium, her quill pausing as she writes a poem, its words a secret rebellion. She hides it beneath her prayers, its lines speaking of freedom, of skies beyond the cloister. Such acts were small but significant, a way to reclaim the self. Some nuns, like the poetess Suor Arcangela Tarabotti in Venice, wrote treatises against forced enclosure, their words daring to challenge the church. Tarabotti's Paternal Tyranny, written in the 17th century but writted in Renaissance grievances, spoke of the injustice of convent life. Her voice, a rare cry from the cloister. Other nuns found power in their roles. An abbess, chosen from among the sisters, wielded authority, managing the convent's finances and discipline. In Florence, the abbess of Santa Verdiana was known for her diplomacy, securing patrons for the convent's survival. Clara, though a novice, dreams of such a role. Her quiet ambition, a spark in the darkness. These women, though bound by vows, shaped their world. Their influence felt in the prayers they led, the books they copied, the lives they touched. The convent was a paradox, a place of confinement and creation, of sacrifice and strength. For every Clara trapped by duty, there was an Agnes whose faith lit the darkness. For every forced vow, there was a Catherine of Siena whose visions changed the church. Their lives were brutal, their freedoms few, but their spirits endured, their prayers a bridge to eternity. Picture them now, kneeling in the chapel, their voices rising in harmony, their hearts a mystery. The convent's walls held them, but their souls reached beyond, touching the divine. As we drift through this world, let us honor these women, their stories carved in the silence of stone. They were sisters, daughters, seekers of grace, their lives a quiet hymn to resilience. Their faith, their labor, their hidden dreams wove a tapestry as rich as any cathedral's. Let their memory linger now as the night deepens, as the convent fades into shadow.
Imagine Isabella's palazzo, a narrow house along the Grand Canal, its windows open to the hum of Venice at dusk. The walls are hung with tapestries, their colors vibrant in the candle's glow, a luxury earned through charm and cunning. Isabella adjusts her mask, its feathers brushing her cheek, as she prepares for the evening salon. Her gown of emerald silk clings to her frame, its neckline daring but calculated, for every detail of her appearance is a performance. In Renaissance Italy, courtesans were a unique class, neither noble nor common, their lives a paradox of freedom and fragility. In Venice, the city of masks, they thrived, their salons drawing poets, merchants, even princes, all seeking the company of women whose minds matched their beauty.
Courtesans like Isabella were not mere prostitutes, though the church and allure often branded them so. They were cortigiani oneste, honest courtesans, educated women who offered companionship, conversation, and art. They sang, played the lute, wrote poetry, and debated philosophy. Their intellect as coveted as their charm. Veronica Franco, a real courtesan of Venice, was their archetype. Her verses published in the 1570s, her wit celebrated by men like Tintoretto and King Henry III of France. Isabella, we might imagine, has read Franco's poems, her own quill scratching sonnets in the quiet hours of dawn. Her library, small but precious, holds books of Petrarch and Boccaccio, their pages worn by her fingers. In a world where women's voices were silenced, courtesans spoke, their words a rare power. Let us linger in Isabella's chamber, where a mirror reflects her painted lips and coal-lined eyes. She is 25, her beauty a carefully crafted mask, but her heart carries the weight of her choices. Unlike noble women bound by marriage, or nuns cloistered by vows, courtesans enjoyed a freedom few women knew. Isabella owns her house, her gowns, her jewels, wealth earned through her patrons, not her father or husband. She moves through Venice's balls and banquets, her laughter mingling with the clink of goblets, her presence a spark in the city's nightlife. Yet this freedom was a double-edged sword, its edge sharp with danger and disdain. To be a courtesan was to live on the margins. The church condemned them as sinners, their souls damned by sermons preached from St. Mark's pulpit. The Venetian Senate, ever watchful, passed laws to regulate their lives, forcing courtesans to register with the state, their names listed in the Catalogo delle Cortigiane, a public record of their trade. Isabella's name is there, we might imagine, her address noted beside it, a mark of both fame and shame. She pays taxes on her earnings, her wealth a source of pride, but also a target. Neighbors whisper, their eyes narrow as she passes, their children forbidden to speak her name. To be a courtesan was to be both admired and reviled, a star that burned brightly, but alone. Picture now a banquet in a noble's palazzo, where Isabella sits at a table laden with roasted pheasant and Murano glass. Her patron, a wealthy merchant named Marco, raises a toast to her wit, his smile masking his possessiveness. Courtesans relied on patrons for protection and income, their relationships a delicate negotiation. A generous patron might gift a house or a string of pearls. A jealous one might demand exclusivity, his temper a threat. Isabella navigates these waters with care, her words honeyed but precise, her laughter a shield. She knows Marco's favor is fleeting, for patrons were fickle, their loyalty swayed by youth or novelty.
Veronica Franco's life offers a glimpse of this world.
Her letters preserved in archives reveal her skill in managing patrons, from poets to princes. She wrote of love, but also of strategy, her pen a tool to secure her future. Yet even Franco faced peril. In 1580, she was accused of witchcraft by the Inquisition, her fame a lightning rod for suspicion. The charges were dropped, but the trial scarred her, a reminder of the courtesan's vulnerability. Isabella too knows this fear. She keeps a dagger hidden in her sleeve, its weight a comfort against the dangers of the night, thieves, rivals, or a patron's wrath. Her beauty is her power, but it is also her peril, a flame that draws both adoration and envy. Let us drift to the quiet of Isabella's library, where she sits alone, a candle illuminating a book of Ovid. Unlike most women, barred from schools and universities, courtesans were often educated, their minds honed to rival any scholars. Isabella learned to read as a child, her mother a seamstress who traded stories for lessons from a priest. As a courtesan, she has studied music, poetry, even Latin, her knowledge a currency as valuable as her beauty. Her salons of fame, as we might imagine, where painters debate perspective and poets recite verses, their words fueled by wine and Isabella's questions. She plays the lute, her fingers dancing over the strings, a voice a melody that lingers in the air. This education was a rare privilege, but it came at a cost. Courtesans were expected to be muses, their intellect a performance for men's pleasure. To falter, to misquote a poet or miss a note, was to risk ridicule. Isabella spends hours preparing, her mind as disciplined as her appearance. She writes poetry, her verses tucked away, for publishing was a man's domain. Yet, women like Veronica Franco and Gaspara Stampa broke this barrier, their poems printed and praised. Isabella dreams of such a legacy, her words a whisper of immortality in a life so fleeting. Juneau, a stormy night. The canals of Venice churning under a sky of thunder. Isabella sits by her window, her heart heavy with rumors. The Inquisition, a shadow over all of Italy, was a constant threat to courtesans. Their beauty, their independence, their defiance of norms made them targets. Accusations of witchcraft or heresy could come from a spurned patron, a jealous rival, or a zealous priest. In 1577, a Venetian courtesan named Elena Ballerina was tried for sorcery, her love potions deemed the work of the devil. She was exiled, her wealth confiscated, her name erased. Isabella knows such stories, her own life a careful balance to avoid such a fate. The church's gaze was unrelenting. Courtesans were barred from certain churches, their presence deemed a stain on sacred ground. Yet many, like Isabella, were devout, their prayers offered to the Virgin Mary, their alms given to the poor. This duality, sinner and penitent, was their burden, their lives a negotiation between survival and salvation. Isabella attends Mass in secret, her face veiled, her heart torn between faith and fear. The Inquisition's spies are everywhere, their reports a threat to her fragile freedom. Yet, amidst the peril, there was power. Picture Isabella at a masked ball, her laughter bright, her mask a shield that hides her weariness. She is a master of her craft, her wit disarming, her presence commanding. She negotiates her fees with merchants, her poems with scholars, her safety with nobles. Her palazzo, though modest, is hers, a testament to her skill. She supports her mother, now old and frail, and a younger sister whom she hopes to spare her own path. These acts of care, of defiance, were the courtesan's strength, their lives a rebellion against a world that sought to confine them. Women like Veronica Franco left a legacy, their poems and letters, a voice for those silenced. Isabella, though fictional, carries this spirit, her life a tapestry of courage woven through danger. She is both celebrated and scorned, free yet bound, a star in Venice's constellation. Her story, like that of countless courtesans, is one of survival, her heart a flame that no shadow could extinguish. And more, dear listener, let your mind drift to a small house in Florence, its walls warmed by the golden light of a summer evening. It is the year 1488, and the air carries the scent of lavender and fresh baked bread. Picture a woman, perhaps named Sophia, sitting by a cradle, her hand gently rocking a newborn child. In Renaissance Italy, motherhood was a sacred duty, but also a perilous journey, where love and loss walked hand in hand. Tonight, we step softly into Sophia's world, where every birth was a battle, every child a fragile hope. These women, bound by the rhythm of life, carried burdens of joy and sorrow in their hearts. Let the soft creak of the cradle guide you now, as we wander through their stories of sacrifice and strength. Settle in and let the past unfold gently, like a lullaby sung in the twilight. Imagine Sophia's home, a modest dwelling near the Arno River, its stone walls worn but sturdy. The fire in the hearth casts a warm glow, its crackle mingling with the hum of a spinning wheel in the corner. Sophia is 24, her dark hair tucked beneath a linen cap, her hands rough from years of household work. She is a merchant's wife, her life a cycle of chores, cooking, sewing, tending to her family. But tonight, her focus is her newborn daughter, Elena, who sleeps fitfully in a wooden cradle. Motherhood was the heart of a woman's role in Renaissance Italy, a duty celebrated by the church, praised by poets, and demanded by society. For women like Sophia, it was both a blessing and a burden, a path lined with hope and shadowed by fear. In Florence, Venice, and the villages beyond, mothers were the keepers of life, their wombs the foundation of family and lineage. The Church exalted the Virgin Mary as the ideal, her image adorning every chapel, her serenity a model for all women. Yet the reality of motherhood was far from serene. Childbirth was a perilous rite, its dangers lurking in every pregnancy. Sophia has borne 4 children, but only 2 survive, Elena and her older son, Matteo, now 6. The others were lost, one to a miscarriage, another to a fever that swept through the city. Each loss is a scar on Sophia's heart, her grief, a quiet weight she carries as she rocks her daughter to sleep. Let us linger by Sophia's side, where the air is heavy with the scent of herbs and wax. She is weary, her body still recovering from Elena's birth 3 weeks ago. Childbirth in Renaissance Italy was a battle, its outcome uncertain even for women of means. For peasant women, the risks were greater, their bodies weakened by hunger and toil. But even merchant wives like Sophia faced danger. Medical knowledge was limited, rooted in ancient texts, like those of Galen and Hippocrates, blended with superstition. Midwives, not physicians, attended most births, their hands skilled but their tools few, a knife, a basin, a bundle of herbs. Sophia's midwife, an older woman named Lucia, used fennel tea to ease her pains and prayers to invoke divine protection. But such measures could not always defy fate. The statistics of the time, pieced together from parish records, paint a grim picture. 1 in 5 women died in childbirth. Their lives claimed by hemorrhage, infection, or exhaustion. A prolonged labor, a breech birth, or a placenta that failed to deliver could turn joy to tragedy. Sophia remembers her own mother, who died giving birth to a stillborn son when Sophia was 10. The memory haunts her. Her mother's pale face etched in her mind, her hands cold as the midwife wept. Sophia's own births have been trials. Matteo's was swift but painful, Elena's long and fraught, her body racked with fever for days after. Yet she survived, her strength a quiet miracle in a world where death was a frequent guest. Picture now the cradle where Elena stirs her tiny fists clenched in sleep. Sophia watches her, her breath catching at every pause in the child's breathing. Infant mortality was a specter that haunted every mother, its shadow cast over every cradle. In Renaissance Italy, nearly half of children died before their 5th year, taken by fevers, diarrhea, or the plague that swept through cities and villages alike. Sophia's son Matteo survived a bout of smallpox, his face marked but his life spared. A blessing she credits to the Virgin Mary, but her other children were not so fortunate. A daughter born 2 years ago lived only 3 days, her body too weak to draw breath. Sophia buried her in the churchyard, her small grave unmarked, her name a whisper in Sophia's prayers.
Mothers like Sophia lived with this fear, their love tempered by the knowledge that each child might be fleeting. They swaddled their infants tightly, believing it strengthened their limbs, and fed them milk from their own breasts or a wet nurse if they could afford one. Wet nurses were common in wealthier families, but Sophia, of modest means, nurses Elena herself, her body aching from the effort. The church encouraged breastfeeding, but malnutrition and fatigue often weakened a mother's milk, leaving infants vulnerable. Sophia boils barley water to supplement her milk, her hands trembling as she spoons it into Elena's mouth, praying it will be enough.
Let us drift to the quiet of midnight, when Sophia sits by the hearth, her husband asleep, the house still but for the creak of the cradle. She hums a lullaby, its melody a thread of comfort in the darkness. Motherhood was not just a physical trial, but an emotional one, its weight carried in silence. The loss of a child was a grief that society expected mothers to bear quietly, their tears hidden behind the demands of daily life. Sophia's husband, Giovanni, mourns their lost children, but his grief is brief, his focus on his trade. Sophia, though, carries each loss like a stone, her heart heavy with memories of tiny hands and fleeting breaths. The church offered solace, its priest promising that lost children were angels in heaven, but this comfort was cold. Sophia attends Mass each Sunday, her prayers a litany of names, her mother, her children, her hopes for Elena and Matteo. She lights candles for them, their flames a flicker of defiance against despair. Yet the church also judged mothers harshly. A stillbirth or miscarriage could be seen as divine punishment, a woman's sin blamed for her loss. Sophia has heard whispers in the market, neighbors questioning her piety after her last child's death. She bears this silently, her faith a shield against their words. Picture Sophia now, in the early morning as she prepares porridge for Matteo, her hands steady despite her weariness. Motherhood was not only about birth, but about the endless labor of raising children. Sophia teaches Matteo his letters, her voice patient as he traces them on a slate. She sews his clothes, mends his shoes, and tells him stories of saints and heroes, her words weaving a world beyond their small house. For Elena, she embroiders a tiny cap, her stitches a prayer for her daughter's future. These acts, though ordinary, were acts of love, their weight as great as any noble's duty. Peasant mothers faced even greater burdens, their children often working the fields by age 7, their small hands pulling weeds or herding goats. Sophia, as a merchant's wife, has more means, but her labor is no less vital. She manages the household, her careful budgeting ensuring there is bread for winter. She tends the garden, growing herbs for both cooking and healing, her knowledge learned from her grandmother. When Matteo falls ill, she brews chamomile tea, her hands steady as she spoons it to him. These